They found her at dawn, collapsed beneath the crimson canopy of Vareth Prime, her breathing shallow, her skin pale as starlight against the moss-covered ground. The expedition suit was torn, the communication array shattered, and her supply pack lay empty 3 meters away, its contents scattered like forgotten prayers. She had been running for 2 days straight, fleeing the predators that had decimated her research team, and now her body had simply given up. The forest around her was silent, watching, waiting. And then, from the shadows between the ancient trees, they came. The cubs were small, no larger than human infants, their fur striped in shades of amber and midnight blue. Their species had no name in human records because no human had ever gotten close enough to study them and lived. The adults were apex predators, 3 meters tall with claws that could shred titanium plating, territorial beyond reason, violent beyond measure. But these were young ones, barely old enough to hunt insects, and they approached her fallen form with something that looked almost like curiosity. The largest cub, its eyes still holding that infant brightness, sniffed at her hand. Her fingers twitched. She was still alive. What happened next would be transmitted across 1,000 worlds, studied in xenobiology courses, debated in council chambers, and whispered about in the quiet corners of ships traveling between stars. Because the cubs did something no Vareth had ever been documented doing. They helped. The largest cub disappeared into the undergrowth and returned moments later, its small jaws carefully cradling a cluster of water-heavy leaves. It approached the human cautiously, placed the leaves near her cracked lips and squeezed. Water, cool and clean, trickled into her mouth. She coughed, her eyes fluttering but not opening, and the cub did it again. And again. Its siblings watched for a moment, then scattered into the forest, returning with their own offerings. More leaves, clusters of moisture-rich berries, even a fragment of honeycomb leaking with sustenance. They worked with a coordination that seemed impossible for creatures so young, so wild. For 3 hours, they kept her alive. The rescue team found her just after midday, their sensors finally locking onto her failing biosignature. They descended in armored exosuits, weapons ready, expecting to retrieve a body or fight off scavengers. Instead, they found her surrounded by a circle of juvenile Verath, each one carefully bringing her water, their tiny paws so gentle it broke something in the hardened soldiers watching. The moment the humans appeared, the cubs fled, vanishing into the forest like ghosts, but the evidence remained. The leaves, the berries, the wet stains around her mouth, the tiny paw prints pressed into the earth around her body. She woke 3 days later in the medical bay of the orbital station, her vitals stabilized, her body healing. When they told her what had happened, she didn't believe them. When they showed her the footage from the rescue team's helmet cameras, she wept. "They saved me," she whispered, staring at the images of those small striped faces, those impossibly gentle paws. "Why did they save me?" The scientific community erupted with theories, imprinting behavior, mistaken identity, random chance. But the researcher, recovered and insistent, returned to Vareth Prime with a new mission. She would understand. She would know. And what she discovered would reshape everything humanity thought it knew about compassion, about instinct, about the invisible threads that connect all living things across the cosmos. She spent months observing, documenting, never approaching, always respectful, and she learned that Varath cubs, in the brief window before they learn to hunt, before the violence of survival hardens them, possess something extraordinary. Empathy, raw, unfiltered, instinctive empathy for anything small, anything helpless, anything that needs. It didn't matter that she was alien. It didn't matter that her scent was wrong, her shape unfamiliar. She was vulnerable, and that was enough. But there was more. She reviewed the footage frame by frame and noticed something the others had missed. The way the largest cub had looked at her, tilted its head, studied her face. The way it had touched her hand, so carefully, as if checking for something. And then she understood. The cub had recognized her breathing, the rhythm of distress, the pattern of pain. Because mammals, no matter how different, no matter how distant their evolutionary paths, share the same fundamental language of suffering. The human had collapsed from exhaustion, broken and dying beneath an alien sky. And the cubs, operating on something deeper than training, deeper than logic, had responded to the oldest law in the universe, When something suffers, you help. Not because it benefits you, not because you'll be rewarded, but because empathy, true empathy, doesn't ask questions. It simply acts. Her report sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Species that had written off humans as aggressive, expansionist, too emotional for civilized space, suddenly saw something different. They saw a woman who returned to the world that almost killed her. Not for conquest, not for resources, but to understand the creatures that saved her. They saw a species that valued compassion over conquest, knowledge over domination. And they saw, in those tiny paw prints pressed into alien soil, a truth that transcended language, transcended biology. Life protects life. Always has. Always will. The researcher eventually left Varath Prime, her work complete, her understanding profound. But she carried with her a small token, a hologram of that largest cub, its paws extended, water dripping from the leaves it held. She wore it on a chain around her neck, and when other species asked her what it meant, she smiled and told them the truth. It means that even in the darkest places, even when we fall, even when we're alone and broken beneath uncaring stars, kindness exists. Not because we're human, but because we're alive, and life, in all its forms, remembers how to care. They brought her water in their tiny paws, and in doing so, they reminded the galaxy what it means to be gentle in a universe of teeth and claws.